Greetings, everyone. I am very excited and honored today to be in conversation with Dr. David Clements. And we're going to be talking about this transition that we're in as humanity and how we can open more to living from our hearts and from that awareness of the consciousness of all that is. But before we get into the conversation, let me give some brief background about you, David, and then we'll get into our conversation. But thank you for being here today.
Oh, you're very welcome. And again, thank you for inviting me. I'm really enjoying this and can't wait to get started.
So, David has a background as a professional theoretical physicist and worked at Oxford and Cambridge universities. You left that profession as you experienced your own conscious awakening and began to explore a whole new understanding of reality as a living, conscious quantum reality. And you now do research on living energy physics and work with your team of advanced galactic beings. And you're developing regenerative living field quantum innovations. And I'll put the links to your site below and also to your Patreon site where you have some profound meditations and talks for people. So thank you for the work that you're doing, and I'm very excited to be in this conversation with you today.
Oh,
And
thank you so much.
maybe we could begin with your sharing a bit about this conscious awakening that you went through that really helped you learn more to live from your heart.
Yeah, certainly. And thank you, Heather, so much. It's a delight to be here. And, I'm really happy that you reached out, and I hope we're going to be good friends from here on. And I have a feeling that's going to be the case. And hello to all of your audience as well. It's a wonderful pleasure to be here to share this information with you. So back at the beginning, when I was a bit of a head case being a physicist, I when I was younger, I was very interested in everything going on up there, everything to do with flying things, races, all that kind of thing. I was just really, really, so interested in that, and just felt this, I couldn't really put my words on it, but now I know that there was a connection waiting to be made, that they were, just waiting for the right time. But I was always interested, but I had no idea about the higher self, conscious development, energetics, heart-centeredness. I was really in my head. I was so in that game. And, I used to have these funny arguments with my mum because she's, quite a spiritual person. I'd say, no, 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 that's just not scientific. I'm sorry. But, I was such a, such a head case. And, I used to laugh because I said, no, no, I'm worse than you are. And, but the thing is, it all kind of started when, or kicked into shape, I'd say, when a friend of mine bought me a book for my birthday. And at this time, I was at Oxford doing my PhD. And it was a book about all things paranormal, so everything UFOs, ESP. There was a section on remote viewing, there, all that kind of stuff. But I particularly got really interested in the remote viewing because people were describing, these people who'd been in these programs and doing this, about having these bilocation experiences where they would actually see themselves on other worlds and other places. I thought, whoa, these aren't, these people are serious about this. So I looked online, got really excited, found a sort of self-training kit, started to do it, and had this colossal experience. Whereas remote viewing, what I knew afterwards would be a volcano, but going into the center of the target, my ears would literally hear this rumbling as if something was shaking the building, but the building wasn't moving, and there was this hot liquid that was flowing, all a very visceral, sensory perception of what I now, discovered afterwards was an active volcano. And, that really was proof positive for me that, wow, this actually works and this is real. And I would not have picked myself to be able to sense what I just did. And so that was the kick on for me, that my teams, I did a little bit more of that. And as I began to learn about the higher self and higher aspects, I was moved away from that into really concentrating on inner work, clearing the way to make more of an inner connection. So that was really the beginning of where it all started, I guess you could say.
I love your emphasis on the importance of our doing that inner work to
Yes,
be able to
yes,
really access the higher heart and that
yes,
those other ways of knowing, because otherwise it creates these blocks or trauma patterns that keep us
yes.
constricted and caught in a denser reality.
Yeah, and one of my teams are impulsing me here. A really good way to visualize this. If you go to the cinema, the projector is going to project pure white light through a screen which filters it, which makes it come out and look like an image on the screen. Now, the more we have this immense well of source energetic inside us. Now, the more we add and grab on and control and really tighten up inside of us, the more we start adding layers and layers of filters or mud that gets in the way of that pure emanation. And the more of that we have, the less emanation we begin to perceive. It almost feels like there's nothing inside. And I hear a lot of people with feedback saying they don't feel anything, they can't perceive anything. And I would always encourage them to say, well, keep going with the clearing, keep going with self-surrendering. And that's an important word, which for my experience through these paths wasn't something that was mentioned very much. And I think it's such a key thing. Self-surrendering or surrendering to self is absolutely vital in my view, because you're letting go of the grip. And as you let go of the grip, you stop holding those pieces of mud and filters and all that dross in the way, so it can start falling away. And it really is ultimately that simple. And I remember the Pleiadians once said, you humanity, you can ascend right now if you want to. All you have to do is fully let go. They say you do not realize the amount of energy you are expending on holding on to self or ideas, identities, traumas, you name it. And I know it's, I know people say, oh, it's really difficult. But that's part of the human unfolding process we're in. So be patient and be compassionate with yourselves, because it all ultimately is about fully letting go to self-surrendering, self-vulnerability, because that source self state is a fully open, self-vulnerable state, but infinitely powerful. And that's the dichotomy, because many people think to let go of the control, to let go of the grip, to let go of, oh my God, suddenly I'm more vulnerable. No, 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 no. What emanates underneath that as you let go is going to organize everything in your field, your life field, or your perception of what you see around you, to things that are supportive of you, that are nurturing, that are exactly a mirror of that divinity within inside you. The chaos we see inside, the troubles we face, is because that source energetic gets filtered and blocked because of the things we hold on to. And so, like the cinema analogy, instead of seeing this beautiful scenery on the screen and just everything idyllic and harmonic and beautiful, we sometimes see awful scenes and nightmarish scenes and things that we don't like, which can be somebody aggressive coming into our lives or an event happening or something going on. We are literally emanating and orchestrating everything. And so to understand ourselves as source emanators, that we emanate energy and we literally sculpt our reality exactly in accordance with the sum total of the energetic we give off, is then to see anything that happens in our reality as a feedback, to say, okay, didn't like that so much. I'm not too keen on that person doing what they're doing. What am I emanating that is calling and shaping my reality to behave like that? Go inside and you will find some layer of mud or trauma or something there, something that may have happened way, way, way back in the past, in previous lifetimes or this lifetime. And then you can release it. And then suddenly that patch that is distorting your emanating light to create something that you don't like dissolves and gives way to a more truer harmonic version of you. So you get more and more closer to the reality that really reflects your divinity and doesn't have all the chaotic things going on. And collectively, I would say, as humanity, that's what we're facing. A lot of people talk about, oh, everything's going off in the world. Well, this is the some collective misappropriated energy that we have been creating, because of the experiences we've going through and because we've lost the understanding that we are emanating everything. We are doing this. We are creating this whole theater. And, there's a lot of talk about, groups and beings that are doing this and everything else. Well, the truth is, you have absolute power to change what you emanate. Nobody has the power to mess around with that inside you. They can't. All they can do is fool you into keep doing what you've been doing, stay asleep, don't change anything, just keep emanating the same dross, the same chaos. And that's where, a certain portion of the human race is at right now. They keep continually cycling through the old and the old and the old, wondering why life keeps getting worse. And it's like, well, when you step into self-vulnerability and you start to let go and you let the source intelligence from your heart emanate deeply more and more and more, you will find all of that stuff starts to change, go away, resettle. New things will appear to you because the universe is literally mirroring you all the time. So what signature are you giving off? What are we giving off collectively as a human race? And so this is the fundamental knowledge, I believe, which is so profound to me when I really had that aha moment, is that what Source Intelligence was saying is if you can just self-surrender, relax, connect with the heart, connect with the sacred heart and the infinity point gateway, allow that energy to infuse, clear, just clear your filtration so that you're emanating this pure energetic. Everything within your body and outside is just going to transform majestically. And it's all up to us, and I keep saying to people, don't focus on what's going on out there other than just to use it as a way to read what it is that you are putting out in order to ask for that to be there. And the more you do that, you realize, oh my goodness, I've had this power all along. I was never powerless. Things weren't just happening to me haphazardly and I was just being affected by things. I was doing it all along and I can change it. And that's the most important thing. You can change your signature to whatever you wish it to be. And what I would say is by aligning and just however it is you want to do it, call in your higher self, your source self, ask them to work with you to start the clearing process, the realignment process, and help you to really start emanating and clearing away the dross. But also, most importantly, to help you to feel the beauty and the serenity and self-surrender. You are not becoming unsafe by doing that. You are moving into a harmonious state of intelligence where everything is harmoniously created outside of you as well. So in a way, by letting go of that control and grip, you are moving into this deep, deep serenity where everything works itself out exactly as your divine intelligence wishes it to be, which is you. You are organizing your life to be the beautiful, idyllic, serene life full of richness, of adventure, of wonder and beauty that you really want. And to get rid of all the dross of the filters that are making weird things, So
It's so beautifully said, David. And it feels to me, and you and I were talking about this before we got on the recording, from my understanding of the processional cycle, about 5 or 6 thousand years ago, we got caught in fear and trauma with earth changes and things that activated our getting caught in survival mentality. And
yes,
it
yes,
led to this illusion of separation,
yes, yes, yes,
increasing alignment to ego consciousness. How do I control my reality? How do I stay safe?
right, right,
And we get caught then in repetitive trauma patterns because then we're trying to control or dominate each other, or we project that sense of danger out onto each other, and then we just
yes,
keep looping through the trauma and destruction. But
yeah,
part of what you're saying that's so powerful is when we begin to move into that observing self,
mm,
then we can remember that we're soul selves. We're
yes,
part of
yes,
infinity.
yes,
There is
yes,
nothing to be afraid of. And then we
exactly,
come back into connection and
yes,
remember we never actually were separate.
yeah,
And then we really being a whole experience of being a part of this loving, living,
yes.
conscious, holographic universe.
Yes, that's exactly right. And one way to visualize it, and before we started recording, I talked about this fortress, this sentinel fortress we build around ourselves. And you're exactly right that from my perspective, I feel that there was this experiential challenge we set for ourselves of what would it be like to have a diminished access to source intelligence within, so that we could forget the remembering of who we were and then work our way back through the remembering and have a series of experiences. Because you see, when you have full access to that kind of presence within you, everything's harmonic, everything is beautiful. It cannot be but that, because that is divine intelligence. So to experience the contrast of that which is not of that, you have to have this sort of densification and this veiling of who you are, to make you perceive as if you don't have that connection, that you cannot remember who you are. It's like putting a virtual reality headset on. It's like, well, if your whole world is idyllic and everything is beautiful, how do you fool yourself into thinking things can go wrong and have these experiences where you get a contrast to that? Well, we have this veil, or, I sort of liken it to having a virtual reality headset on, where suddenly you are still in the idyllic world, you're still in the field of divinity, but now you have an altered perception where you see things not going right, going chaotic, and doing things that you don't like. But at any time, as soon as we wish to, we can let that veil go. And that's what we're doing. This is part of the ascension process. We're moving past those false veils of perception. And like you said before, coming back to the ego aspect, that what's happened is that when you're in that enlightened state and everything is serenely organized in perfect harmony with you, when you emanate source intelligence, everything works perfectly as you'd love it to be, to bring you the greatest joy and the greatest beauty that you're. It's just purely automatic. That's divine intelligence. And what happens is, as we descended into this density and this veil came around, suddenly there was this diminished level of this intelligent organization of everything outside of you. Suddenly it becomes unorganized and starts to become chaotic. It starts to look dead and operates in a more sort of mechanistic way. Suddenly, oh my God, I've got to push that out of the way. I've got to do this. I've got to start acting mechanistically and controlling it to make sure I'm safe in my life path, And then, many lifetimes over many lifetimes, that started to sort of cement itself. And then suddenly this feedback loop starts happening, where you start convincing yourself the only way to be safe is to control yourself, to control others, to control your environment, and everybody else is doing the same thing. And so there'll be clashes, there will be conflict, there will be all this other thing, stuff happening at the same time. And, and when that same group, if you imagine this, starts to say, hang on a second, clearly something's very wrong here. Why don't we all just start looking back inside, reconnecting back with source intelligence and infusing back with that unlimited, infinite, source intelligence. Suddenly, all the conflict drops away because the control starts disappearing. The need for survival starts disappearing, and you realize you are an unending, infinite being of source intelligence. There is nothing that you cannot do. And so there's no need for survival. There's no need to grab and take and push and pull. That in of itself, but more so, when we collectively emit that source intelligence, our environment reshapes itself to be less dense, less mechanistic, more living energetics. And to give people a contrast on that, when you look at your walls around you, it just looks like it has the appearance of dead structure. It doesn't seem to be living, it doesn't seem to move, it doesn't seem to do anything. But when you look deeper into the atom of all things that are made up of that structure, inside, because they have their own veils, because of this experience, matter has its own veiling. Now, when you look deeper than that, you suddenly realize, oh my God, there is a universe of living energetics in every single atom waiting to present itself. And imagine a world, because there's a lot of stories talking about, ascended masters that have this glow and cities of light that glow. And yes, indeed, that what I've been shown and what I've seen for myself is that when matter undergoes that unveiling, and the veiling is one-to-one with our unlifting of unveiling as well. When that veil comes off, matter starts to luminesce because it transforms from a dead material, or the apparency of a dead material structure, into a living energetic emanation that behaves very differently to what it is that you think it is, how it's operating today. And so that's where we're moving into very slowly, bit by bit, as more and more people take that path to open up inside and realize you have always been safe. You've always been looked after. You are always guided, and the guidance is always the same. Come back within, relax, let go, open up back to yourself. You are surrendering to yourself. You're not just giving away your power and think, oh, whatever, let's just chill. And then, because that is one of the things that in perception, people have the thought of. I did in the beginning because of my background. I was very hesitant to kind of, go through the steps of letting go. So I do understand what it can be like. But having sort of my team sort of like keep going on me, as I'm sure many people, and I'm sure you have as well, Heather, can really appreciate this, is that bit by bit, as the fortress bricks start to break away, and the sensation of self-grip, self-fortifying, and self-preservation start to diminish, what comes out behind that is this divine intelligence that says, you were there at the beginning of the birth of every universe, every solar system, everything. You have access to it all. How can you possibly be unsafe? And the unsafety is a misperception by looking through this veil, by looking through this misperception, this sort of, this art of this sort of, what's the word I'm looking for now? This invented sort of survival intelligence that we call the ego, that has come into play so strongly because we had such a diminished connection with source intelligence. Something else had to come in and play the safety maker, or the preserver, or the one that keeps everything okay and in check, and keep that person away and do this and do that kind of thing, And that is what is that's part of the fortress that we've built, and we're just letting that go. And if you just imagine this sort of very dim fortress that's breaking away, and as it breaks, this powerful luminescent emission comes from the center that says, I was always there. I never left you, and you were never separated. It's just that the fortress that you created, the veiling, gave you the misperception that you had lost the connection, but you haven't. You never have, and you can't lose it. So that is a really wonderful, uplifting thing that I felt for myself when I had that aha moment. And I hope for everybody else that's listening as well, because there's a lot of people out there that are going through some difficult stuff right now with this falling away of the self-fortress, so to speak.
I want to circle back too to what you're saying about light, but of what you're describing, and many in my community talk about this, it's almost like we're feeling a dimensional divide right now, because so many of us are awakening, are remembering who we truly are, and coming back to that connection with our hearts and our soul self. And yet there's, I think, as we're in this time of transformation, there are many who are clinging even harder to the power over paradigms, and on a path of technocracy. And we were talking earlier about the increasing idealization of technology and artificial intelligence. Can you say some about your understanding of that?
Yeah, sure, certainly. And so essentially the way I see it, I sort of very jokingly call the acronym of AI as the absence of intelligence, because and perhaps I should start here, that what we have inside of us as the source intelligence carries with it the layers of intelligence, of compassion, of kindness, of balance. There's so many qualities to the intelligence that comes within us that guides us, and it's like we were talking before, it's not that anybody has to cultivate a map or a set of rules of morality of what to do, what not to do, because that's obviously a very mentally orientated thing. The intelligence within your heart will always guide you with the most beautiful and sublime intelligence of compassion, of kindness, and it's It's innate. And the more you connect with it, the more you just become it, and you just act like that. It's not like, oh yes, on today I've got to do this, this, and this, and this, and I've checked the list of kindness for today. It's not like that. You just simply are lovingly impulsed to behave as the divine being that you are. It's very natural. It's very innate. And now, coming back to what we were saying, this is a perfect setting, because as people had this veiling experience, a certain group of people went quite deep into this and have such a sensation of disconnect that they are so now outwardly focused on control, making things happen, X, Y, Z, and they are so fundamentally afraid of not having control because they fear what will happen if they don't have all those control mechanisms in place. And to me, what I call it the absence of intelligence, because it's my fun-loving way of talking about it, is really a manifestation, I feel, of exactly that. It's when people get to that state that they feel that they have no connection with inside them. It's almost like the mechanistic aspects of them drives them to create more technology, more control, more mechanisms. And the idea, if you think about the silliness of it, that you have this divine intelligence, this infinite intelligence inside you that has built and designed and created this and every other universe that exists. It is unimaginably infinite. I know that sounds a bit of an oxymoron to say it that way, but it is literally, creation is infinite. Why would a being that has access to that want to then create this little bitty computer that pretends to mimic divine intelligence, thinking that that is the solution forward? And that brings a big contrast, because those that make them have so forgotten their divinity, that divine intelligence, that they genuinely think this is the way forward, that they just need more advanced intellect to do this and this and this and this. But what I would say is this: absence of intelligence doesn't create. It does permutations. It just takes what is already there and permutes it, does something with it, and comes up with something else. Just like the mind does. People are very mind-orientated. What the mind does, it takes your past experiences, mulches them together to create what appears to be something new, or a new direction, or a new idea. But it's really a collection of everything you've already experienced that the mind can access. But when it is impulsed by the heart, that pure creative energy, to do something genuinely new, that is a turning point. Because the way I see it is, part of our unfolding is to allow the mind, our body, to become instruments of the divine emanation from our heart center, not to be flapping around doing their own thing. Because, absence of intelligence is one of the results, I feel, of people who've gone too far down that road of being disconnected, thinking they've just got to create, just that life is just attaining greater intellect or greater intellectual achievement or attainment. And absence of intelligence, I believe, is just a manifestation of that drive. That when you come back inside, you realize that no mechanistic form of intelligence or mimicry or attempts to mimic your divine intelligence can ever get anywhere near that. It's just simply not possible. It's like trying to say that, oh, if I just draw the best drawing possible, I can either match, the great artistry of what has created this universe. It's like, well, keep on going. You'll keep doing that forever. It's like, and this is the thing. It's the way I see it is that inherently there's nothing wrong with technology that serves life. But when people try to replace or make an archetype out of technology as if it's this place we need to go. No, we don't need to go there. What we need to do is connect back with inside of us and invite out past and break down the veil, this infinite divine intelligence we have inside us that we have full access to at whenever we choose to. We just have to get ourselves out of the way, get the fortress to dissolve away that we've created. And it's always been there, it's still there. And the other thing I say is that when you look at, these artificial intelligences, that they don't have access to that. They are purely mechanistically operating, synthetic, technology. And so they never operate in a way of, as divine beings would, from an intelligence of compassion, an intelligence of understanding, of kindness towards others, towards respect towards others, all of those beautiful, harmonious, divine qualities that we have inside of us. So essentially, it's operating from, self-replication, self-survival, self-preservation, very fundamental mechanistic principles. And so that is the difference. And I believe that eventually, this is something that is going to present itself to people as more and more people cultivate that inner connection, is you understand that there is an innate intelligence inside you, that you do not need technology. And these higher beings that operate, some of them have ships, but when you go higher, they don't use any of that at all. They can literally create their reality field to be whatever it is they wish it to be instantaneously. They can move back and forward wherever they want to. They have full flight of universal principles inside them. Why would they ever need, artificial mechanistic constructions outside of them? It just simply is not needed. So I would say that that's one thing that I believe as divinity opens up inside of us, mechanisms, structures of old energy that are built on these old principles of survival and just, almost mindless self-replication and so on and so on, are going to dissolve away because they are literally mirror manifestations of certain groups of people who have become so outwardly obsessed with intellectual advancement and attainment, but they have forgotten the true intelligence within inside them, which intellect pales into comparison compared to this divine intelligence,
Well, and as you talk a lot about, David, the mind ultimately is operating in that realm of polarity. And that
Yes,
it's
yes,
only when we get into the heart, not only can we access that um, portal to higher consciousness, but we access that connection to unity consciousness. And
yes,
that remembrance that everything is a part of this living conscious reality that
yes,
functions in its harmonic way of being. And
yes,
then we can co-create with that and be
yeah,
very much in relationship with that rather than separate from that and caught in polarity.
yes. Yeah, and there's two things I'd love to say on that. And one thing is, one of the ways that the veil makes us think that we're separate is it gives us a level of perception which makes us think there's this spatial separation in between us. But as the veil falls away and the actual field of true existence starts to come into play, you're, oh my goodness, we're actually part of the same thing. It was just the veil that was telling us this when it's really that.
Mm.
And the other aspect of this is that it's almost like if you imagine, one way they're showing me to look at this, imagine like a star field on your computer screen, and then suddenly you turn up the gamma or brightness setting so it completely whites out the entire screen. Well, as you slide that from where it was, being all this apparent dark space and these point lights just sitting everywhere, apparently disconnected, suddenly everything moves into complete unity as you go to that level of brightness. In other words, as you take that veil away and it dissolves away, what's revealed is that you were always one all the time. Our perceptions were being altered in such a way to make us seem like we were separate, to seem like we were alone and isolated, but in truth we are not. And this is part of an ascension process when the veil starts to just dissolve, dissolve, dissolve. And it's intricately related to the fortress that we have built around ourselves, because that is a self-created veil that reinforces that existing veil of what we came in to experience, this game of apparent separation. And it does come back to polarity as well, because in density you get these polarity, the positive, the negative, the up and the down, and the expansive and the collapsing, and so on. And the brain, as it is designed to generate both poles of that. So when you create through the mind, you're creating both the positive aspect and the negative aspect. And by allowing this bridge to form between so we have this infinity point, which is our direct access to the source infinite intelligence, which is in the middle of the sacred heart or the soul heart, and that then connects directly into, the energetic heart or the heart chakra and the physical heart. And so we have this direct phone line, if you like. That's probably a bad analogy, we're talking about technology, but we have this direct portal, this access within us, where we personally have a direct gateway to the source creation. Nothing gets in its way. You just have to go in and practice connecting, and learning how to self-surrender to it, and come back into yourself. But when that emission comes out and you start bridging up towards the mind, and the mind starts relaxing and letting go and letting go and letting go, I believe what's happening is we're undergoing a transformation, so that the mind, instead of being a polarity generator, is going to move it as an instrument of this source intelligence to become a unity generator. It's going to be something different. I don't know how long that's going to take, but my feeling is there's going to be deep, deep transformations of the physical body and the mind to move people out of this mind separate from source, tucked away down there that people don't necessarily know about. It's going to become this beautiful, sublime instrument where this massive emanation of source intelligence, that glow I talked about before, as some masters, people have said they had this glow coming off them. Well, that really is the source emanation coming out of them. They have such an openness to their sacred heart, their infinity point. Suddenly the mind starts to reorientate itself to become a beautiful instrument of that intelligence, an extension, much like we have fingers that we think are our physical instruments that we can use to grab things, paint, play, do whatever we want to do. The mind in the same way, I believe, is undergoing a similar transformation, and it all emanates from this center.
And let's talk more about light, because I love when you talk about we're in a holographic universe. I love your description of photons as these packets of information, and that how, as we're getting these increased energies from the sun right now, the galactic center has reactivated and is pulsing with light, that all of that is supporting our transformation. We're receiving these downloads of light activating higher consciousness. And it's interesting that the Peruvian shamans talk about our being in this time of transmutation into becoming homoluminous ones.
Yes, yeah.
So can you talk more about light and how that's supporting us?
Yeah, definitely. It's very interesting, because one of the ways to assist humanity to shift, because the journey ultimately is an inner one, but if you have such a level of apparent disconnection, there's no true disconnection, but it might appear like that the fortress is so big and strong and black that there's no getting through it, which is not true, of course. There is an external assistance coming in that starts literally infusing you with informationally packed, energetically imbued light particles or photons, which are just the quantal packets of a light field, with these rich codings that are designed to infuse into you and start the dissolving process down externally, to make it easier, so that when enough of that external assistance has come in and broken and dissolved away your inner fortress and those layers, hey, hang on a second. Suddenly I'm starting to perceive there is this glow coming from inside, because the fortress is sufficiently broken down now. So I believe it's a twofold assistance. It's assistance from within and assistance from without. And the two almost have a sort of breakthrough coming together when they dissolve through the veils, that are preventing the inner glow, but also, also preventing a lot of the light from coming inside. So as it keeps being absorbed by you, gently by gently, step by step, it starts to dissolve and offer you the opportunity to let go of the next layer and the next layer and the next layer. And so as these big waves, particularly from solar flares, and like you said, emanations from all over the place, the galactic center, emanations from different systems, there's so much rich assistance right now. And it's all geared towards helping humanity really break out of this sort of unconscious state of living behind this veil, as if we were just bobbing around, just doing what we can to survive. You have a short existence, and then you go into the next one and you do the same thing again. It's become such a meaningless existence in that way. But the richness and the just there really are no words to speak of how profound and how beautiful living in divine intelligence is. Living what we're doing at the moment is not even a pebble amongst an entire world of what we have the ability to live as. It really isn't. I mean, that's even selling it short as well. It's immense. So I believe that what we're happening is exactly that there are these rich codes to help us remind, help break down the barriers, help us reconnect and remember the infinite source well we have inside of us. And I think it's all part of that process. But the way the living light behaves is it doesn't override free will. So it can come towards you, and if you're really adamant, you're resisting and you don't want to accept it, you come kicking and screaming, and it will have a limited effect on you. But if you really are open and you really embrace what this assistance is doing for you, you can really start to move leaps and bounds. And that comes back to self-surrender again, because when you really go into it, we really are only holding ourselves in the way of ourselves, or better said, they're saying, we're holding the fortress in the way of ourselves, because we believe, or have falsely believed, that the fortress is there to protect us, that it protects us from people being mean, or people being harmful, or situations that might be uncomfortable. Truth is, the fortress doesn't do anything for you. It's an illusion. It doesn't help you at all. It actually gets in the way of you emanating and connecting with your source intelligence, and it also gets in the way of those beautiful light codes and packets coming to you. So it's always so good, I find, to remind yourself just to really just let go of the fortress. It was created out of misunderstanding and misperception, and now we're unraveling it to reveal who we really are in our self-surrendered state, to be true emanators of this unlimited, powerful source intelligence. And everything is going to change, literally everything. Reality is going to reshape itself in ways that we simply cannot speak of right now. It's going to be amazing.
Well, and it feels, and we know then that it could change in the twinkling of an eye, because as we eat from back heart, then we're emanating that energy into the collective consciousness that wants to be healed. And part of what I experience within this community is the joy of being in those heart connections with each other.
Yes.
The joy of opening into that awareness that we can be in relationship with all that is, with the consciousness of the plants, of the animals, of the earth. When I teach astrology, we connect to the consciousness of the planets and the stars. Then we're back in that harmonic interaction with the consciousness of all that is. And it's just allowing us to open to that joy and sense of coming back into that sense of the oneness of all that is.
Yes. And I believe that, one of the images I'm being shown right now is that imagine, as you were saying, in the meditative state, you have a better perception of all things, of the interconnection. And they're saying, imagine that everything starts glowing. The trees, the earth, plants, everything, even literally the air itself becomes, starts emanating. You start to see that glow is actually what was always there. That is the unity field in which all of what we perceive as structure is already in. But now it's the perception of it being sort of dark or dim or disconnected and mechanical in nature falls away. The glow comes back in that was already there, because our perception, it's just a change in our perception. Suddenly we realize that, wow, all the structure you see around us, the physical structure of the earth, the plants, it's all part of the one field. It's all us. We're all one and the same. But we're just experiencing this sort of state of separatedness that has gone way, way, way sort of too far, where we built these intense fortresses around us, which act to reinforce this immense feeling of separation or distinctness from things around us. Like, the wall is not part of me. Oh, the earth is not part of me. It all keeps reinforcing those illusions, and sometimes intensely so for people. But yes, when you go into meditation, it's a relaxation where the grip starts to let go, And with that letting go of the grip, your perception starts to get a better view of everything. And with that better view, you start to perceive the unity. You start to perceive more of a glow. You start to perceive things as you wouldn't normally do in your self-contracted state, where your view is kind of like that, and you can't see very much, which is, how a lot of people operate. And having been in that world, I know what it's like to operate like that. And I'm reminded of this time when I was writing at my PhD thesis, so I was really, really headlong into the mental stuff. And I went out for a walk just to take a break, and there was this beautiful sunset. It was just these beautiful reds and orange glows as it was setting. It was lighting up the whole sky. And I became aware I couldn't feel anything. I couldn't appreciate it. I couldn't feel the sweetness and the beauty of what I was seeing. It felt numb. And that really disturbed me, as if to say, oh my goodness, this is beautiful. I know it's beautiful, but I can't feel the beauty of what I'm looking at. That really, really rattled me. And I came back home and I said, my goodness, what has happened to me that I can no longer feel, that sweetness and the experience of that. And that was one of the other things that sort of set me on my journey that I believe my higher self wanted me to perceive. See, do you see how numb to sensation and perception you become when you are so locked down in intellectual self-fortressing that your ability to perceive energies goes right down into the pit? And so, learning to undo that. And they always say, even to this day, because sometimes you get a little bit too focused and you start slipping back into a bit of contraction there. Let's just relax to you. You're just slipping back a bit. Just relax, take a break. And when you come off and you relax again, suddenly your energy perception starts switching back on again, So they're almost mutually exclusive. You can't be in self-contraction and, that fortressification, if that's a word, just to give it a word, and have full energy perception. You're in one or in the other,
Well, it fits with what you've talked about too, about the layers of reality, and that
Yes.
physical reality is energy condensed into this
Yes.
density.
Yes.
We go to the sub-physical and then the sub-quantum and then the
Yes.
quantum. It
Yes.
all becomes this living energy field, and
Yes.
fluid, and time and space are fluid.
Yeah.
It's when we get caught in that sense of separation, then we're locked into this dense layer of reality that isn't
Yes.
true reflection of reality.
That's a very good point. Thank you for bringing that up, because that's a great way of explaining it. If you imagine, like I was just saying, our perception and perception of energy goes one-to-one with our state of perception. What I mean by that is, the more self-surrendered you become, the more you let go of that fortress, everything becomes more living and fluid. Our perception is able to perceive the fluidity, the livingness of the luminescence that is already there. But if we choose to contract, what we're doing is we're literally then emanating that the universe reflects it to become a contracted and mechanistic reflection of what we are doing to ourselves. So in other words, it's saying, okay, you want more of this? Okay, I'll give you this. That's what you're asking for, But when you relax and open up, suddenly your emanation changes, and now you're asking for more what is in alignment with your true divinity, which is self-surrenderness, pure fluidity, pure relaxation, and the ability to perceive vast bandwidths of fields and energetics that come with that. And everybody will have had the experience. Like if you have an experience where you get suddenly angry and then suddenly, oh God, I feel real riled up. I can't feel anything. You're really upset, everything like that. Well, that is exactly an example of that. You've just gone back into the heavy-duty fortress. You've shored up, closed the doors, and, you're ready to buckle up, basically. And so your perception and energy sensitivity goes down with that, because you are now shifting your perception into that. But again, if you then relax, and when the situation calms down and why did I react like that? And then suddenly you realize, wow, suddenly my energy perception starts going up again. I can feel, I can see more. Now I can see the situation clearly, because my perception has changed. I can see the whole energetics of what just happened, how I created that. Because that's why I say to people, if you're in an issue, don't try and solve it then. Just come away, relax, get back into the relaxed state, because you will never solve an issue that you have accidentally created by being in the contracted, fortress state. You have to come away, relax, allow your perception to expand again so you can see the energetics that are going on, swirling around, and that have created that situation. Then you can make changes, because you have to make changes at a high level. You can't make them at the level of the problem. You have to go higher.
Well, and also, I love, David, that your description of how we can do that inner work really parallels a lot of what I talk about in the book that I co-authored with Kristina Lea on how we can heal by stepping into that observer self so that we're not in the reactive self.
Yes, yes, yes.
When you step into the observer self, the witness self, and then when you're caught, in situations that have triggered you,
Mm.
you can begin to, and you talk about this beautifully, you can begin to dialogue with those parts of yourself that may be coming
Yes,
out of past wounds or
yes.
memories that have gotten triggered from the past. And then you can hold those parts of yourself with compassion,
Yes, yes,
bring them into your heart,
yes,
allows them to heal, and then you're clearing those coping mechanisms that
yes,
you're looping in the trauma pattern. So it really is about surrendering into that heart connection and opening that compassion for all
yes,
those aspects of ourselves that need to be reclaimed and brought
yes.
into that loving embrace.
Yes, and in a way, the another wonderful question there is that one of the things I found early on most difficult were these fragments of myself. That when we have these past lives and we've had traumatic experience, we could have been in battles, or we could have fallen off a cliff, or a whole number of things that could have happened that were deeply traumatic. When it's sufficiently traumatic, parts of our consciousness can sort of fragment. They don't break off and disappear. They're still there, but they feel like they're now a separate part of us. People talk about like hearing disturbing things going on, like thoughts they don't like. Well, those are, in my experience, really coming from fragmentation aspects of us that are really calling out for our help. And, I had a lot of those to work through. And so, and you realize in the beginning, it's very easy to go into reactionary mode and start fighting as if something is going very wrong inside you. But again, when you learn to relax and go into, what you say to being that pure perception mode, being relaxed so that you can start to feel and see the energy very clearly. You see the fragment very clearly and you can understand, I see now. Okay. So you've had this traumatic experience. You've never seen anything different because you're simply looping and cycling through this again and again. And you've been in this so long, you've known nothing else. It's like everything else to this fragment has become clouded. It only knows that it needs help, and the only way to do it is to cause fuss or to get your attention in some way. And then when you sit down in front of it, and one of the simplest ways I say to people is sit down with it in front of a fire, transmutational fire, and you simply invite this aspect to come and sit with you. Say everything it wants to, even if it's swearing expletives and getting really angry under the sun. Let it go into the fire, just express it out. Then it settles down, and then it's then very open to the emanation and healing that you would offer it. And oftentimes my higher self says, we can take this aspect up, we can put it into a cocoon, we can regenerate, heal, and completely soothe all of these traumas, the memories, the patterns, everything away, and then bring it back into unity, back into where it belongs. And the transformation and the results that we've seen from people who've done this and done that simple meditation, and I'm sure there's many other versions, whatever you find works best for you. The transformations people have felt like, wow, it's like years worth of things that bother them have suddenly just disappeared. They didn't realize it was this one fragment that was so strong that was causing all the problems. And again, this really signifies just the missing understanding that would so help guide people forward, just these simple little nuggets. Because I see a lot of people a lot of the time that are really struggling through things, and there are simple steps just to check for fragments, check the emotional charge that is stored in that fragment, that is enhancing the trauma by magnetizing this cycling process of going through it again and again. And the simple steps that your higher self is ready and willing to offer to take care of this. But again, it's respect and honor of free will. They can't just come in there and say, oh, step aside, we're going to take that off you, just keep quiet, we'll handle this for you. It doesn't work that way. Divinity doesn't work by doing that. It wishes for you to become aware. It wishes for you to understand. But if you choose not to understand and you fight and buck and want to go the other way, it also respects that as well. It's all part of the path of learning to understand and become fully sovereign emanators of source energy, in understanding how we work and who we are and what needs energetic realignment. It's just the self-development process, basically. So yeah, definitely.
And say a little bit more about, I love your description of what the ascension process is about. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding in some spiritual communities that it's about transcendence, it's
Right.
about spiritual bypass, rather than it really being this surrender to that living consciousness and realization that
Yes.
we're embodying and expressing the oneness, the sacredness of.
Yes.
So say more
Yes.
how you
Yeah,
understand.
that's a really good question. I'm glad you asked that. Yeah, ascension is not escapism. It's not escaping from what you think you need to leave behind in that way. It is the transformation of your perception, in my view, from being one that is so collapsed down into structural mechanistic energetics to one that suddenly sees the living glow in all things. Your body glows, the material, the fundamental atomic structure of your body loses its own veil and starts to glow and luminesce as well. It's moving into a truer version of yourself, a more a version of yourself. People talk about the higher self. Well, the higher self is simply you, which has that expanded perception already. It sees the 100,000 foot view of you and all of your energetics because its perception is so wide, it's so open. And that is what we're moving into, I feel. And so this process that we're going through in this in-body ascension experience is that we have this opportunity to have the body expand with us and open up and luminesce with us as our perception evolves, and we evolve as a very interconnected source presence within what we perceive as a physical body that is fully interconnected and fully flowing from that source waterfall or that flow of energy that comes within inside of us. Suddenly all of your cells are fully communicating on multidimensional energetic levels. There is a synergy and a harmony, a sort of bioflow, if you like, of everything working organically together. And with that perception shift becomes the ability to see multidimensional levels. You mentioned before about the diagram I give where there's a physical layer, the subphysical layer, and the subquantum and quantum, and so on. Well, that's a very, very. There's unfortunately I couldn't think of a way to really, but it's not quite like that because it's not a layering system. It's
Oh,
like, yeah, yeah, they're not distinct like that, but it's really the only way of, graphically representing it without confusing people and myself as well. And it's imagine if one way they talked about it, if you imagine as let's say you're like, this is a human being here. In the center is this gateway, this heart-centered gateway. And around that is a vessel we call the soul, or the container of experience. And this beautiful emanation field that comes out of that is the higher aspect of us, the higher self. Now, the more perception you have, as your perception expands, you get greater and greater and greater views of the field spheres that emanate from you, that go up multidimensionally and expand out into infinite oneness. And so really the nature of the game is it's all about perception, energy perception. And you only get to that level or those levels by going and opening the heart center, because that's where the perception comes from. You cannot intellectually perceive multidimensional realms. People have tried to talk about it and put words on it and give it structure. You can't do it, because it's the one way of looking at it is infinity is a quality, it's not a quantity. So you can never assemble a series of quantities together to describe the quality of infinity. It doesn't work. It will never get there. And when you have come back into source oneness, your perception is everything, the quality of infinity. But when you take your perception and you start to focus it on any particular thing, suddenly your perception comes from this down to this. And now you are aware of what is in there within your perception field, so to speak. And so this is what's happened to humanity. We have had this perception limitation, or this intense densification focus to be so prolific around us, this fortress we have inside of us, that our ability to perceive and be aware of these multidimensional higher energetics has been obscured. And that really is the veil. It's something that we have and are holding around us, and that we have the power to let go of. And by letting go and releasing and self-surrendering, we are literally going in, and with self-surrender comes the expansion of perception, of observation, of awareness of energies, multidimensional energies, which is just another way of saying energies that are more fluid, more living, more expansive, and vibrate at such a high rate. It's a little bit like a radio. When people have a radio set and they turn those old style, not the digital ones, those really old ones where you turn it up and down. Oh, I've got the station. There it is. That is in a sense an analogy that is the perception. You're tuning the perception of the radio to perceive the particular bandwidth or frequency field that you want it to perceive. And when you reach the right radio station, I can hear everything this radio is. I can perceive the language, whatever this DJ is talking about on this one bandwidth, but I can't hear anything else. But everything else is simultaneously going on at the same time. And so when you learn to expand your perception, you are becoming simultaneously aware of the multi-dimensional or multi-spectral energetics around you all at once. And as you're able to stabilize that and be at harmony, be at centered, be at peace with that beautiful information, that richness of living energetics, you get the opportunity to expand again and then jump up even further with your perception of multidimensionality. Then you stabilize, you're good with that. Okay, I'm good to operate like this. I can do it again and again and again and again until you get back to pure oneness, of all that is, the quality of infinity.
It's extraordinary to think of what's possible for us.
Oh, yes.
Remember that. And before we stop, David, talk a little bit about how you've really described, all these fields of reality are interconnected, and we have this opportunity to become the multiple dimensional beings that we are. And you talk about how these advanced beings that you relate to on your teams know how to bring themselves back into harmony, tap into that healing, regenerative energy.
Yes.
And that you're doing that with these innovations that are tapping into those living energy physics of the quantum field that can pull in those energies that guide us back into harmony and into generative energy, rather than being caught in this dimension of generative and non-generative energy.
Yes. Yeah, that's a great one too. And so the way I would explain it is this, that if you have, a group of marbles all over the desk there, all chaotically surrounded out and everything, they'll just sit there. And you might think, okay, I need to harmonically arrange these to make sure they work or operate in a certain way. So I'm just going to pick those and put those over here. So you are literally controlling and organizing matter to organize itself in a particular way to perform the function that you wish it to do. That, in a sense, is technology in a nutshell. Now, the intellectual way of doing things is, I remember an ascended being once saying, the heart's version of understanding is compassion, but the mind's version of understanding is control. And in a way, this is the difficulty with out of balance intellectual pursuit, is that you end up trying to control and make everything into this force function of, no, it must do this, it must do that, it must work like this. Source intelligence is a very different kettle of fish altogether, to coin a phrase. That sounds a bit weird to say it like that. But it is fundamentally different, because what it does is it imbues this living intelligent luminosity that's there, and it begins to organize matter in this almost waterfall flowing way. It doesn't force, it doesn't control, it doesn't push, and it doesn't pull. Those are all artifacts of polarity, of control and polarity. And when you allow that emanation to come forward, suddenly your cells become imbued with this divine instruction, not a controlling instruction, it's a flow of how to operate in a life-biased, life-flowing, optimal way for optimum joy and health and everything else. See, the divine intelligence within us, I know it's really hard to get the phrase right to describe it because it is the quality of infinity, but it is biased towards joy and expansion. And we have these beautiful bodies in which to experience a certain way of reality and perceiving and interacting and living and going about our lives. And it seeks to optimize that. It seeks to organize everything into a beautiful harmonic way. And these beings have that. Their bodies emanate. They don't degrade. They don't fall to pieces. They're simply constantly in this state of this energy that uplifts, changes, optimizes in this profound, multi-dimensional, living, intelligent way. And all cells have this, because of they're imbued with this energy, are multi-dimensionally connected, they're quantumly connected, and they all speak to each other as if they were one. And what seems to happen when we're born as a baby, you look into a baby's eyes, it's beaming with this beautiful sort of divine energy, and then suddenly somewhere that just starts to go away, and we become teenagers and adults and everything, And something happens where this level of regenerative energy just falls away. It's almost like the veil comes on, and the ability of this divine, intelligent, organizational energy to influence our cells, to influence our bodies, falls away. And now cells have to refer to the previous generation of cells for their instructions on how to divide and move forward. And it's like a photocopier. You take a pristine, beautiful document or image, you put that in a photocopier, say, yeah, that's pretty good, that's not a bad copy, I'm going to take that back out, I'm going to put it in the front there, I'm going to keep doing that and doing that. After about 50 cycles, there's virtually nothing left. It's fallen to pieces, because every time it copies, it copies degradation, it copies damage, it copies everything else. And it doesn't get this replenishment of pure, clean instruction on how to repair itself, how to divide properly, how to do all the good things it should do. But what my teams have told me is that when you get to a certain level of openness with that divine energy, suddenly that all changes. The cells now work from a very different place. They work from living energetics from within the sacred heart. There's a very different way of living from what we have right now. And these beings, I know that many other people that connect with them and channel with them as well, they're good to go for as long as they want to. They choose, okay, I think I've had enough of experience in this body. Now I might jump to another one or do something else now. I've had a good experience, and they can have that for as long as they want to. That's the nature of the game. And that's how it should be, because divine intelligence is not looking for you to have an experience where everything just keeps breaking down all the time and you're just trying to get through the molasses, hopefully have some morsel of joy as you get through it. That's not the way it's supposed to work. But again, as humanity, it's really exciting to realize the power we have, that nothing is holding us from that. It's us. We are holding the fortress in place that prevents that emanation from imbuing us, imbuing our cells, imbuing our minds with all that divine intelligence that will literally harmonize, balance, and flow everything the right way. And it's all done according to the core of our intelligence of who we are. So somebody's saying, oh, who's making up the rules of how does it work? Well, the divine intelligence of us always seeks to bring us the greatest joy. That's what it does. That's almost the motivation behind everything that Source does. Joy, expansion, creativity, adventure, all the good qualities, that people in themselves are seeking. Well, that is the nature, in my view, of divine intelligence. It's what it does. It's not looking for struggle and problems and things like that. It's looking for creativity and expansion and new things and wonderment and things that give it the sweetness of life. So that in a nutshell is what I would say, is that when we get back to having that, crossing the threshold of having sufficient source emanation within us, where suddenly the cells can now run and operate within that divine flow of source intelligence, that's a game changer. That's when everything changes as a human being.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this conversation, and I hope we'll have many more. But thank you for what you've shared, but also what you emanate that helps us remember who we are and who we're capable of being and how to come back into connection with that source energy that, from my perspective, is ultimately the energy of source consciousness and love.
Yes, it is. And thank you so much. I hope we have many more as well. I've loved meeting you. I hope we're going to be good friends from here. And yeah, just to finish on that is when I talk about source energy, it is love. It is the intelligence of love. I know love has many connotations and many ideas that people mix around and everything, but and a lot of people are afraid to take this path because they think, oh, it's love, it's lovey-dovey and all this kind of stuff. Well, love is literally just a word that describes the living essence of source intelligence. It's what it is, and it's nothing to be afraid of. It's truly just unimaginably, infinitely beautiful. Everything it touches, it wants to bring beauty, harmony, and kindness and compassion to. And so imbuing yourself with that is really just returning to that pure state of beauty that I feel deep down everyone is seeking, but they don't necessarily understand how to get there. And so, yeah, definitely, it is as simple as love, 100%, definitely.
And then finding our soul song and singing it in
Yes.
harmony with all that is.
Yes, letting it all come through and letting and it will handle the transformation beautifully for you. You don't need to worry about the details, the the packing list or the whatever it is that you might have. It's all going to be taken care of because infinite source love sees the full multidimensional spread of you. It is the full multidimensional spread of you. It knows how to handle everything harmoniously. You just need to relax, let go, and enjoy and trust. And that's really, to me, what trust is. It's surrendering to the divinity in yourself. That's it. That's all trust is. It's as simple as that. You're not giving up your power. You're coming back into truly who you are. That to me is trust.
Mm, thank you.
You're
Thank
very
you so
welcome.
much. And thank you to this community for the way in which you are awakening and supporting this shift that we're capable.
Definitely, yes, yeah. And I would just love to say a final word to everybody listening. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this information helps you in whatever way you wish it to help you. And I hope you have this wonderful journey of heart opening and the experience of the sweetness, the beauty, and the kindness that is already in you and never left you and is waiting for you to connect. So, with that, have a wonderful, wonderful journey and a wonderful day. And I wish you the very best.
Mm, blessed be.